Just over 2 months ago, a deep-sea oil rig leased by BP exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, unleashing an oil spill which is now one of the worst ecological disasters the world has ever seen. It has put millions of people and wildlife living along vast parts of America's coastline in jeopardy. It has caused an unprecedented cooling of our relationship with the US and is costing BP billions of pounds to fix. But how exactly did this catastrophic event unfold? This is the untold story of the first 36 hours of the disaster. From the moment the rig blew up, the scramble to save the lives of its workers, and the desperate attempts to salvage the rig and avoid the cataclysmic damage that followed. The Gulf of Mexico is a vast, oil-rich basin in the Atlantic Ocean that produces over a quarter of America's ever-increasing need for fuel. 40 miles off the coast of Louisiana is the site of semi-submersible oil rig Deepwater Horizon. Shortly after 10 p.m. on the 20th of April, disaster struck the Deepwater Horizon when it suffered a massive blowout. 126 people are on board. Many are asleep. One of them is rig worker Chris Choi.
I heard the first explosion, and I sat up and sat on the edge of the bed, you know, just wondering what it was. That's when the second larger explosion went off. I mean, I just remember being just scared to death.
Chris leaves his room, walking into a deep-sea rigger's worst nightmare.
First thing I saw, the ceiling was on fire. There's a walkway right above me. That walkway was on fire. So I turned around to go back to the front of the rig, and that's when I saw the flames. As soon as I saw that, I knew there was no way we were going to put it out. We were just going to get off of there, I was sure. I kept thinking well, we're all dead. I hadn't seen anybody until this point. I didn't know if I was the only person still on the rig or what. I run back to the front. My chief mate is running down there towards me, and he's hollering. I can see the crane operator that fell. He said, I can see him down over by the starboard crane, and I can't get to him. And while we were trying to get over there, there was some more explosions, and it just put flames in between us and the crane operator. And we didn't have a choice but to turn around, which is a horrible thing to have on your mind, that you know you were right there next to somebody that you couldn't help.
The Deepwater Horizon is unlike conventional rigs built on legs. It is a state-of-the-art semi-submersible platform costing hundreds of millions of dollars to build and is designed to drill new wells. Once in position, the two pontoons are flooded with seawater to stabilize its massive platform. This allows the rig to operate at depths of over 1.5 miles. But deep-sea drilling has always carried dangers. The explosion is so violent that the first distress calls the Coast Guard received come from rigs and boats several miles away from the burning platform.
I took the call. The person was panicking. The person was telling me that there was a rig is on fire and he can see it.
Lieutenant Nathan Houck was the lead officer on duty that night.
We received a report from a van that said that an entire rig was on fire with over 100 people on board, and people were jumping overboard. There's no waiting around for that. That's an immediate response. We launched everybody that we had available. We also launched every helo that we could find. Initially, when the first report came in, we didn't know whether or not there was over 100 people in the water.
With everyone scrambled, 4 rescue helicopters are in the air within minutes.
The adrenaline starts flowing immediately. Your heart starts racing immediately. There's a sense of urgency.
But the helicopters have limited capacity to carry any rescue victims, and there could be more than 100 casualties already in the water.
The initial explosion was 115 nautical miles away from our base. We can, at most, rescue 3 to 4 people at a time. Where are we going to take them? What's their condition? At the time we launched, we didn't know any of this information.
A few minutes later, the Coast Guard crews could actually see what they were dealing with.
I could see the glow of the burning rig at 90 miles away. I knew this was big.
it looked like that I was flying to New York City.
As the helicopters get closer, it becomes clear just how dangerous any rescue attempt is going to be.
We were hovering about half a mile to the east of the burning rig, and I could feel the intensity of the flames through the fuselage of the airframe. And I was looking into this burning hulk of metal, and it was like looking into the face of the devil.
With the lives of up to 126 rig workers at risk, the Coast Guard team have to be ready to put their men into the water.
When you're out there on a rig, fire breaks out, there's not a whole lot of places for you to go.
The oil rig support ships, or tenders, try to cool parts of the rig so that the men on board can find a way off. They are also cooling the main superstructure to try and preserve the metal and keep it afloat until the firefighters can get there. The fire is being fed by a pipe that connects the rig to the ocean floor. These rigs are designed to be held exactly in place using thrusters under the platforms and a satellite positioning system. With that system now destroyed, the only thing holding the rig in place is the riser pipe, which moves debris and mud and oil back to the surface. As the Coast Guard's search of the rig for survivors proves initially fruitless, the only hope is that the 126 workers on board had already made their way into the lifeboats.
Everybody started hollering to abandon the rig. I got the number 2 lifeboat, and that was the lifeboat that most of the hurt people were in, the injured guys were in.
Chris Choi helps his injured colleagues until they get lucky when a rig supply vessel working in the area finds them drifting and hauls them on board.
At that point, we had a little bit of hope that we were going to be able to rescue some people.
They wanted us to pick up the critically injured first, the ones who weren't able to walk.
Coast Guard showed up, I want to say 30 to 45 minutes after we got on the boat. They sent a couple guys down to help us.
These guys are the Coast Guard's elite swimmers, highly trained rescuers who are ready to go into the water to save injured or drowning people.
It's going out the door, your adrenaline's just running, you're excited. You get on the boat, and then you see all these people that are injured, and it's kind of like, what do I do?
10 feet below the rail.
When I first went in, my rescue swimmer, Kurt Peterson, said, this is who we want to get out first. He's got really low vitals. He had a severe laceration to his neck, screaming in pain. So I was like, all right, well, let's get him going.
Survivors getting in the basket very slowly.
This is a chance for the Coast Guard swimmers to assess just how badly hurt the survivors from the rig are.
There's people with multiple leg fractures, blisters, charred skin. It's really undescribable.
Okay, survivors at the door.
While the rig continues to burn, the critically injured are flown to hospitals in Alabama and Louisiana. 7 hours after the first explosion, 115 of the 126 who are on the rig are accounted for. In the hours ahead, specialist rescue teams spring into action.
Hit the road, we've got a rig on fire, respond and be at the airport as soon as you can.
Dawn reveals the enormity of the rig inferno.
The images just burn in my head. I'll never forget watching that.
And the Coast Guard have to step up their search.
It's not over yet. It's not uncommon for us to find people after they've been in the water for a day or two.
Developing story to tell you about this morning. The Coast Guard is searching for at least 11 missing oil rig workers off of the coast of Louisiana. They vanished after an explosion last night. Search teams are hoping that they are on lifeboats in the Gulf of Mexico.
8 hours since the Deepwater Horizon oil platform exploded off the American coast, the massive oil fire continues to hold the firefighting teams at bay and stop them from getting on board. The only thing keeping the floating platform in place is the riser waste pipe. If this snaps, the rig could start bleeding oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Specialist teams are now desperately needed.
There's 1,000 bits and pieces that compile a mobilization of any sort, especially a major one in this regard. You've got to get people in motion, and you've got to get equipment in motion so that no time is wasted on the emergency.
The salvors face a 400-mile journey from Houston to the Louisiana coast before they can board a boat out to the rig. A second team